Radio collectors know that there are many different radio bands. The classic transistor radio had just one band, the most common one at the time, known as AM. If an early transistor radio had two bands, that extra band was typically a shortwave band. By the middle 1960s, if a transistor radio had two bands, that other band wouldn't be shortwave. It would be what? FM, of course. FM radio came into its own in the 1960s, providing alternative programming to those tired of typical AM fare. FM sounded better, and so was especially suited for music. It had been the place where classical music lovers went in the 40s and 50s. With the rise of alternative rock and easy listening formats in the 60s and 70s, FM's popularity grew, until finally overtaking AM as the most popular radio band in the USA in 1978. But in the 1960s, a radio with FM would still cost you a premium price. You might think this little Zenith from the mid-1960s looks like an inexpensive transistor radio from its styling. But no, it had AM and FM bands and was not cheap. Zenith was an early believer in FM radio. In their hometown of Chicago, Zenith even started one of America's first FM radio stations in 1940. On this model, trying to look all up to date, their historic lightning bolt logo was not used. Throughout the 1960s and beyond, Zenith would abandon and then re-embrace that classic logo. By this time in the transistor radio's evolution, manufacturers were really hoping their customers would stop opening up and poking around inside their radios. Not much good ever came of that from their perspective. And so we have a battery cover for changing the battery and having access to nothing else. The way this thing is held together, there is no obvious way of getting it apart. So even though I'd like to show you inside this thing, I'm going to take the hint Zenith is giving me and stay out. Who are we to go against the Zenith Radio Corporation of America? So who made the first transistor AM/FM radio? Well, I know of none earlier than this one, the Sony TFM 151 from 1958. It was definitely Sony's first AM/FM anyway. It was a large one, far too big for any kind of pocket, and so is the size commonly called portable. It had 15 transistors and weighed several tons. I don't know any other maker that might have a claim to have beaten Sony to market with an FM transistor radio. I would have guessed Zenith if I had to, but Zenith's first transistor radio with FM was the behemoth known as the Royal 2000, and it appeared 2 years after the Sony, in 1960. This little plastic shirt pocket size Zenith R26L was made in Hong Kong. While most American radio manufacturers contracted with radio makers in Japan for their radios, beginning around 1960, Zenith was different, sourcing theirs out of Hong Kong. Other American makers went to Hong Kong too, eventually, after leaving Japan, but Zenith went directly to Hong Kong for most of their transistor radios. Out of the many dozens of Zenith transistor radio models, I know of only one example made in Japan. This one, shown briefly in the beginning of this video, Zenith's The Continental. It says on the back, Zenith, Japan. Zenith went their own way on a lot of things, stubbornly refusing to compromise quality, even while others caved in to the whims of markets and the demands of discount buyers. That is why, I think it is safe to say, in Zenith's heyday, no other American brand in consumer electronics enjoyed as much loyalty from their customers. It's hard to tell much from a radio like this, that you can't even get the back off of, but collectors know from experience with Zenith's Royal 500 radios and others that this consumer loyalty was well-deserved. The quality goes in before the name goes on. You can't get away with a slogan like this for very long unless you mean it. And you know, I think Zenith really did.